Here's our scene that we want to make a quick ink sketch of. This looks like some sort of castle gatehouse building. The large stone blocks are a reasonably important part, so I want to try and represent those blocks without clearly drawing them all. I want to create the effect of those blocks. In a similar way, I'm going to want to create the effect of this tree here. I certainly want to add this figure because that tells us the scale and makes this gate much more imposing. What pen am I going to use? And I've decided to use a 0.3 because there is a fair bit of detail. I don't want too thick a line. If the line is too heavy and there's too much of it, then line can actually overwhelm the form. And in most cases, it's the form that we want to come through. Now, because the shadows are important for this scene, I'm actually going to use marker tone for the shadows. So I'm going to use my Copic sketch markers, and as always, I'll be using the brush end. And where do I start? What part will give me the best chance to draw accurately? And I think I'm going to start with the tower. There is a slight camera distortion. The vertical lines all point inwards towards the center line, but I'm not going to draw that. I'm going to straighten everything out. What I plan to do is draw for a few minutes and then give some thoughts and suggestions and tips from that drawing and then go on to the next part. I can draw a lot faster if I'm not trying to talk at the same time. So now we've got to that scary part where we actually put the pen on paper. I've just edited this part into the video now, having actually finished the drawing, to say that in real time it took me 35 to 40 minutes, which was a little bit longer than I expected. But sometimes drawings in the end determine the best rhythm to take. But because it did take a little bit longer than I planned, I've also decided to speed up the video to double time, which actually still could almost pass as real time. In fact, when I see how slow double time is, it makes me think I wasn't drawing nearly as fast as it felt. Let's get back to it. So having quickly roughed in one tower, I want to now capture this so I can establish the length of the drawing, and then I think I will move across it. And now I need to make sure I start to draw in this lamp before I draw in the gate behind it, and using the scale of what I've drawn to work out the scale for these gates. Well, our time's racing away. I'm happy with the way the proportions are working out. But what I want to do now is define this section down here and then just spend a little more time going back over parts I've already done, like the final line work, the suggestion of the underlying textures of the surfaces. I'm now going to just work over it and add a little more emphasis in some parts with my line work before I apply the tone. Now, this is a bright sunshine day, and the way to create the bright sunshine effect is to have a strong contrast between areas in the sun and areas not in the sun. So that's what I'm going to be trying to do. We read tone against other tones, so just putting one tone on, especially at the start, can be hard to know which way to go. Once there's a tone there, we can get a sense of whether we want to go lighter or darker. I'm just in my head trying to work out whether I start with this as an N3 or an N4. I get my little Copic marker thing, and I think this tells me that I'll definitely want to go with the N4. With this tree, I'm going to do most of this with tone, but I still want a bit of line just to help to suggest to the brain exactly what's happening. I think that's enough. It's always tempting to do too much detail at this stage because we don't want to spend time doing with our line what we're going to do much faster and possibly more effectively with our ink tone. I'm going to start with N4 with neutral grey for this section in here, and I'll be going a little bit slowly in here because I want to make sure I get the edge of these shadows okay, and I'll probably actually let some of these edges be done with an N3 to give a slightly softer effect where towards the ends of the branches there are less leaves, so there's less shadow being cast. I also have to take a little bit of time to try and get around these objects that I want to be very clearly defined in the sunlight. Let's start with the tone. I'm wanting to create a really strong effect of the sunlight on the stonework. And therefore I think I'm going to put some light tone over all of the foliage, even though it is in full sun as well, and also over this tiled area of the roof. Just very lightly, I'm going to use a 0 or 1 tone, and then I'll have a quick check, and then I'll see how we're going. What do you think? So here's my quick ink sketch. It's always good to ask yourself, what am I happy with? What am I not happy with? My figure's just a little bit too large, but I also think I need to colour his top. Again, I'll use my lightest tone because I do want to keep him as looking like he's in the sun. And his backpack. And looking at this now, I think, yes, what I needed to do was to actually leave just the slightest edge of light between the shadow and him, which wasn't obvious when he was still white. The only other option I've got is to try and darken that shadow around him. As I said, we work tones off what's already there. So this isn't a darker colour, but sometimes just adding more of it over the top does actually have a darkening effect. And then I will now add some 5 here. And there, I think that's worked, and I'm going to leave it at this now. Oh no, I just see something else. This is the problem. But this is actually the fun part. And again, even though this is in fact the same ink that I've used here, I wanted to try and darken the effect just here to make this tower pop out a little more. The inks do dry lighter. They're a bit darker when they're wet on the paper, so we have to allow for that too. But I'm happy with that. I think that works. So just trying to create a sense of maybe some of the stonework just in these areas where I've got the chance. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Hope you found this interesting, hope you found it fun. I hope you found it motivating to have a go at a quick ink sketch yourself. Keeping our pen work nice and loose gives us a little flexibility to make corrections, to draw over the top, even when we're not going to erase any lines. There we go. But whatever you're drawing, however you're drawing it, however long it takes you to draw it, make sure you have fun. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, why not? There's about 250 videos and more coming constantly. I'll see you next time. Bye.